Treyson Bourguet, McCae Hillstead, or Bear Bachmeier. BYU have a three-way battle in training camp to be BYU starting quarterback, and history tells us exactly how long this quarterback battle will last.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com and get 50% off your first year. Coming up on today's show, we're talking BYU's quarterback battle as training camp is set to begin in just over a week's time, and how long exactly we can expect this quarterback battle to last, or maybe not last. Then we'll talk with BYU Athletic Director Brian Santiago. I had a great opportunity to catch up with him at Big 12 Media Days, talk a lot of BYU football and what the future holds for him at the helm of BYU Athletics. You'll hear that conversation. And we'll finish up today's show peeking behind enemy lines with a West Virginia offensive lineman, Landon Livingston. What does he expect as the West Virginia Mountaineers come to Provo, Utah? Well, there's one thing in particular he's looking forward to, and we'll get to that later on in today's podcast. All right, let's talk BYU's quarterback battle. Obviously, that is going to have the major headlines throughout training camp upcoming. And even though Kalani Sitake says it's a four-man battle, including Emerson Guilman, I am narrowing it down to three guys. As I mentioned in the open of today's show, Bear Bachmeier, Treyson Bourguet, and McCae Hillstead. You can book it. Those three guys have the best opportunity to be the starting quarterback for BYU this fall. And as I also mentioned, what does history tell us about how this quarterback battle is going to play out? Well, one thing I can tell you is that even if during training camp at some point, as Aaron Roderick is keen on saying, that the team tells you who the starting quarterback is going to be, do you expect him or Kalani Sitake to get up there at any point during the 29-ish or so practices they will have over the month-long training camp they will conduct? Do you expect them to get up and say, hey, we know who our starting quarterback is, and it's insert X name here? No, they will not do that. They will keep it close to the vest, even if they do know early on in training camp. They'll let it ride all the way until they kick off against Portland State. Conversely, should training camp continue to leave them baffled and unaware of who they believe is truly capable of being the quarterback for BYU, the good news is, as many out there, Josh Pate and others say, BYU's got maybe the weakest Power 4 schedule in the entire country this year. Now, I would disagree with that to a certain degree, but the non-conference slate for BYU, it is in many respects the perfect training/proving ground for these three guys to show what they're capable of. Maybe it's a two-man race at that point. Maybe one of them has fallen off the pace and you're down to two guys. You could use those three games as truly the proving ground. And then by the time that September 27th rolls around, when you take on Colorado in your Big 12 opener, you've got to have settled on who your guy is going to be. If you look back at the history of BYU starting freshman quarterbacks of recent past, the most recent one is Zach Wilson, and he did not earn the job right out of training camp. Remember, they went, I believe it was 7 games deep into his freshman campaign before handing the reins over to him against Hawaii. To Zach's credit, he endured some injury concerns over the next couple of years, but ultimately emerged on the other side as a true legend for BYU football, the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, in fact, after that magical 2020 football season. Can history tell us that maybe they have a guy, maybe McCae Hillstead or Treyson Bourguet, who starts the season as BYU starting quarterback? They earned that right coming out of training camp, but maybe halfway through the season, BYU feels like, hey, okay, now we get to take the training wheels off a guy like Bear Bachmeier, throw him in there, and see what we got. I don't think it's any argument, at least I don't see a way you can argue it, that the ceiling for a guy like Bear Bachmeier is head and shoulders above that of Treyson Bourguet and McCae Hillstead. And it's not saying that they don't have pretty good ceilings on them, speaking to those two other quarterbacks. But Bear Bachmeier, he's 18 years old. He's a 4-star prospect. He's already 220 plus pounds in terms of just, he's got a man's body for a freshman quarterback. Yeah, he wears a funky number. So what? I love the fact that this kid, from what I understand, has got some moxie. He's got football smarts. His older brother, in fact, Hank Bachmeier, ultimately won the starting quarterback job right out of training camp when he was at Boise State all those years ago. So it's not that he can't win the quarterback job. It just feels like BYU's history tells us they may slow play it a little bit, let him get a little more ingrained in the system, and then at some point during the season, hand the reins over to him versus handing them to him out of the chute. But as I mentioned, with as soft a non-conference slate as it appears BYU has, maybe you just do kick the tires on that and see what Bear's got in the tank and see what he's capable of when those lights are the brightest. I don't think there's any real good answer for this, but I do think that BYU is hoping, at least if not expecting, that during training camp, one of these three really emerges and the team kind of coalesces around that player and essentially forces the coach's hands to say, okay, that's our guy. Last year, it was Jake Gretzloff. There was an early push that Gary Bohannon made for that job, but after 2 weeks plus time, it was very clear to the coaches that Jake was the guy, and to Jake's credit, he seized the opportunity and helped BYU to an 11-2 campaign last year. You don't have him anymore. Now you have to have a similar type battle, but this time it goes 3 ways versus 2, and to the victor go the spoils. We'll see who ultimately emerges on the other side as the best option for the BYU football program. But their whole job, speaking of the coaching staff, is to identify who that player is. And you have to have your gumption is probably the wrong term for it. You got to be able to go with it and stick with it. It can be very easy to play musical chairs at that position, especially when you got 3 different guys who have challenged for time there. But I think Aaron Roderick, Kalani Sitake, and the rest of the BYU brain trust, speaking of the coaching staff that would have say on this, I think they're smart enough to sit down and say, you know what? We've got to settle on a guy. And once we settle on him, until they tell us absolutely they cannot get it done, they are our guy, and we have to go with them. And maybe you lose a guy along the way because of that, but that's just the simple fact of life when it comes to football. Only one guy can really be your quarterback. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. We hear that adage all the time, and is more true than I think anybody cares to realize or say, because you have to have one guy, and if you don't have that guy, well, guess what? You're in the market looking for the guy, because quarterbacks, they are absolutely critical to any and all success you want to have as a football program. And this quarterback battle, it's got pretty high stakes riding on it. And I don't envy anybody looking at this and trying to make that decision. But at the same time, they have at least 3 guys that they've got belief can emerge as the guy. And hopefully one of them does do that and helps lead BYU to some pretty high heights this coming football season. All right, coming up next, we're going to catch up with BYU Athletic Director Brian Santiago. I had a great opportunity to talk with him one-on-one at Big 12 Media Days. Had a long conversation about BYU football, his new role as the lead guy for BYU Athletics, and where he sees the future for BYU and in athletics in general. We'll talk with him next, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Have you ever wished that managing your money was easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can be just that. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center, helping you track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So while you're managing your money, you're also building wealth right alongside it. The best part about it is a lot of us have got significant others that we're sharing accounts with. If you want to stay on the same page together, Monarch Money can do just that. You can see exactly where you're at, both of you at the same time, and obviously set goals in conjunction with one another to help you build your wealth. But more importantly, if you want to make sure that you know where each other are at, this app can help you do that. It also can help you start your spending, make sure you're obviously not spending beyond a limit that you maybe set for yourself. It's got it all for you guys, and it's all in one simple app. So go to monarchmoney.com today, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get 50% off your first year. You heard that right. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get half off your first year. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there, wherever you might be in Cougar Nation. I've got a little bit of a new face tracking technology on this camera I added to the repertoire. It's kind of interesting. I finally activated it for today's podcast for the very first time. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you see it kind of moving with my face. That's why I'm just kind of trying out. We'll see if I like it in the end, but nonetheless, cool technology and, tracks your face. So kind of interesting. But nonetheless, let's talk with BYU Athletic Director Brian Santiago. Had a great opportunity to catch up with Brian at Big 12 Media Days. We had a great chat about his new role as BYU's Athletic Director, what he hopes to accomplish as he inherits a chair that Tom Homo filled very, very well for more than 2 decades. But Brian's been right there in lockstep with Tom for so long. What does he hope to accomplish now that he takes over full control of BYU athletics? But more importantly, what does he hope to do in terms of helping BYU football stay near, if not at the top of the Big 12? Well, those are questions that we had answered among many others. And here you go, Brian Santiago with myself right here on Locked On Cougars.
Media days are a crazy thing. This is your first one as BYU AD. How different has it been in your experience from previous ones?
Yeah, the biggest thing is it's so nice to be here with Kalani Sitake.
Yeah.
There's nobody better in the business as far as just having a feel for BYU, for this place, for the Big 12, that we have so much respect. And then it was super fun to be with our players last night and today. I jumped in a room and listened to them answer some questions, and it gets me super excited not only for the football that's upcoming, but just who these guys are as people. I'm super impressed with our coach and our players.
Do you feel like you've settled in at all since taking over?
It's a fair question. Jake, I'm one that just feels like I've been part of a great team.
Yeah.
Been mentored by the best in the business in Tom Homo.
Yeah.
And I feel like because of my relationships with our coaches, it's allowed for a smooth transition.
Yeah.
But as we put our team together and get closer to doing that and having some people around me that can help, I feel like it's just going to keep getting better and better. But it's been a great learning experience.
Yeah.
I've been so amazed in this spot to learn from so many people and be able to see what's going on. You get exposed to a lot more.
Yeah.
And certainly there's a respect factor there, because when you're in the administration, I was the number 2 guy, and then you actually move to the athletic director chair, you're just exposed to a lot more. But so grateful to be at an institution like BYU that stands for something way bigger than sport, and to be mentored now by President Reese and Keith Borkink, and like I said, to be around these coaches, it's been great. It's really been a good learning experience for me.
The honor code's come back into the national consciousness recently. I guess the easiest question is, how do you guys approach it, and how do you guys go about espousing it? Because I know you guys stand by the principles that it stands for.
Yeah, I think that our president has commented on it, and we all commented. It's a strength for BYU.
Yeah.
And student athletes across the country and all of those young men and women that are at BYU right now are choosing BYU precisely because of the honor code. And it's our responsibility to continue to cultivate that culture. It's a strength for us. We actually believe that these student athletes, some of the most prominent in the country, are choosing BYU for what it stands for. Both members of our faith and religiously diverse student athletes as well. So we're going to embrace it, and we're grateful to tell the world that our student athletes and coaches are going to compete at the highest level and compete for national championships and do it the BYU way. And that's where magic starts happening. And so we're super excited about the future. And in these tougher situations, we're going to stand with confidence and knowing exactly who we are. And we don't ever want to lose the human element of making sure that we're also helping young men and women as they move forward in their lives.
You talked about Kalani and being here with him. He's entering his 10th year as a football coach, and I know it's as hard as that is to believe. He's been a decade on the job. How do you think he is now versus when he's maybe started the position? I know you've been around the whole time.
He gets better and better and better, not only as a football coach, but as a human being. Like the culture that he's built, we're winning at a very, very high level, and we're going to continue to win at a high level because of he and his coaching staff. He's put a remarkable coaching staff together. They're doing great things. They're building depth. We all know at this level, at the Power 4 level, you have to have great depth to be great. I went on record last year before the season started and told everyone, I don't think people realize how good of a team Kalani and our staff have put together, we're going to surprise a lot of people. And it's exactly what happened last year. And I think we're going to continue to play really sound football, but he's just such a great leader.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we have such a huge emotional win last year after the University of Utah game in an incredible game. And the things that were talked about after the game in the locker room, it shows what kind of a leader Kalani Sitake is. And in the development of the whole person at BYU, he's trying to develop men that are prepared to go change the world. And those are the coaches you want to go to battle with. And I'm super excited to be on the mountain with him and climbing the mountain together with Kalani.
We're watching this college sports universe change dramatically. House settlements in effect, the College Sports Commission, all this stuff.
Yeah.
How have you been able to adapt to it? I guess in some ways, it helps you because you're coming in right as it's making all these changes too.
Yeah, I'm super fortunate that I have the experience of being in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm also fortunate that we have a team at BYU that we've prepared for this.
Okay.
And we're actually really excited about the transition from third parties, the transition of power that the settlement brings back to the universities and to the athletic departments. Yeah. That's going to be a strength for us because not only are we prepared for it, we are really fortunate to be at a university that manages our resources so well. We've made great decisions and sound decisions in our athletic department. So financially we're prepared, but we're also prepared with a plan that's going to be able to focus on the football and basketball programs that are a major part of our revenue. But it also allows us to really put resources into the other athletic teams and the Olympic sports so that we can continue to be great across the board in all of our sports. That is what we're trying to do, is be nationally relevant across the board and do it the BYU way.
When it comes to NIL, you mentioned the fact it's going to more come in-house in that respect. Do you like that element where you're able to actually, I guess, have some more control of it?
Yeah, 100%. Right? Everyone knows the third party element of NIL was unsustainable. Bringing it back in-house, now that there are rules that if everybody plays by, and the CSC and the enforcing arm of the CSC enforces, this is going to be a great thing for BYU, because if we can control inside how we're allocating resources, we can be responsible with the sacred resources we have responsibility for. We can invest in the student athletes that we want to invest in that fit BYU. That's where magic's going to happen. We're really excited about this transition back to the universities, because now the power lies right here with us at BYU, and we can make the sound decisions. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the gratitude that we feel for those individuals that helped us, not only the donors and corporate sponsors, but the individuals that jumped in, the Royal Blue Collective, that helped us navigate the last couple of years. There's so much gratitude we feel for those people because of what they did to help us navigate a really tricky time in the history of college sports. And so I just want to express gratitude to them. In particular, there's a gentleman by the name of Min Kim that I'm going to mention because he led out with the Royal Blue, and just immense gratitude for the time and effort he put in to help us do things the right way the last 2 or 3 years in a very turbulent world that prepared us to be able to bring it in-house and now us manage it.
Get you out of here on this. Obviously you have a basketball background, but we talked with you at your introductory press conference. You said, hey, football's got to be the focus here. But you also mentioned you want all sports to be relevant. How are you going to go about that? Because you talk about the majority of the resources, the revenue generators are men's basketball and football, but how do you go about allocating enough for the other sports to feel like they're still feeling the love?
Yeah, Jake, that's a great question. Football is the ship. Yeah. I said it in the press conference, and the focus needs to be on football. I mean, 75+% of your revenues are brought in by your football program. You have to focus there. And men's basketball brings in another 15 to 20%. So you really want to make sure you're allocating resources proportional to making sure that your revenue sports are relevant, nationally relevant, which they are. But at the same time, There are a lot of conferences and other schools that are saying, hey, we're only going to invest in these 2 or 3 other Olympic sports. We're going to invest in all of them. And you say, how do you do that? You got to be really sound with your finances, and it's got to be a team game. And we really feel that Kalani, Kevin Young, leading out, that they need the resources to maximize what they're doing. One of our key principles in the one team culture that we've been building over time is to maximize football. It's the M in team. But there are all these other areas that we need to, you're talking about top organization, embracing belonging, the athlete ecosystem, and then maximizing football. So we're going to maximize those sports, but we are going to invest other resources into our Olympic sports so that we can be relevant. We have been excelling. We're national champions in men's and women's cross country, our volleyball, soccer. So many of our other teams have been top of the class. We would be ignorant to divest in those sports when we're excellent. So we're going to continue to invest across the board, and we're going to be very creative. And we actually think we can do it in a way where we're responsible with the resources so that all of our teams can be wildly successful and make sure that we're leaving nobody behind. We expect greatness from all of our sports.
There you have it, Brian Santiago with myself right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. A big thank you to him for taking the time down at Big 12 Media Days to talk with myself. And I know he talked with a lot of other people, but you can tell that he's excited to have this new job. But more importantly, you can tell that he is bullish on the future for BYU, house settlement or not, NIL, all of it. Brian has embraced every part of it. That was one thing he's actually was asked to spearhead by Tom Homo, is to kind of help BYU navigate this newfound world, this new era that includes now the house settlement, NIL, the transfer portal. And to Brian's credit, he's been on it from the early days of this, and I can tell you that he's probably got ideas that he wants to try out, and you heard him talk about the fact that he feels like BYU still going to be in an advantageous spot when it comes to NIL and the like. So we'll see how it all plays out for BYU football, but he knows that BYU football, it's the engine that drives everything else in BYU athletics. You got to make sure these guys are taken care of. Football is the chief revenue generator, even as much as he is a basketball guy. You can tell that Brian understands that you got to make sure football is taken care of first and foremost, and then kind of delineates down from there if you want to make sure you have a healthy athletic department, which is exactly what BYU's mandate is that their athletic department, it's got to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining. It's got to generate all the revenue that it subsists on, and being in the Big 12 is a big part of that. And you can tell that Brian's very, very happy to be in that chair, but also looking forward to leading BYU on in to the future. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk with a West Virginia offensive lineman, Landon Livingston. Had a great chat with him, what he expects looking behind enemy lines at the West Virginia BYU matchup. What does he hope to see when he and the rest of the West Virginia Mountaineers come out to the Wasatch Front? Well, he'll explain that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, another request for you guys to do just that. Click the link in the show notes below. Join us today. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I am hearing. And it's the best part is just $5 a month, and they come to your phone in the form of a text message. That's an awesome way to interact with the show. And I guess the kicker I should add in is you don't have to pay a dime for 2 weeks, full 14 days of a free trial before you charge a single penny. So make sure you join us here on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, time now to wrap up today's show, looking behind enemy lines. Now, West Virginia comes out to Provo on a Friday night before General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Obviously, an interesting week because it'll be a short week for West Virginia as they make a trip across the country. It'll be a late night from them, body clock time, 10 p.m. plus. But Landon Livingston, an offensive lineman for the West Virginia Mountaineers, he is looking forward to seeing what Utah, what BYU, what the surrounding area in Provo is like. And we had a great conversation about that very thing and a few other topics right here on Locked On Cougars.
Have you ever been to Utah before?
Have not.
Okay.
I've definitely seen pictures though.
Okay, well, because obviously West Virginia, Morgantown, there's plenty of mountains as well. What do you expect when you comes up against facing BYU kind of mid-season time?
I think it'll be a great atmosphere. I believe it's a Friday night game at night. And you've kind of seen videos and clips of BYU games like that in the past, and definitely see a great atmosphere. So I'm expecting a very elite atmosphere up there.
Now, new head coach with Rich Rod actually returning to West Virginia. What's it been like working with him so far?
Very good. It's great to have him back. Very intense workout. So obviously something that you kind of have to get adjusted to, but it's hard edge football. It's really, the Mountaineer mentality, looking at the coal miners. We really want to represent them well, and as a program, we know that we represent the state. So we want to make sure that we're out there playing hard for not only our staff, but the whole state as well.
His offense back in the day was so revolutionary with the tempo, the spread formations, and the like. What's it been like as a lineman adapting to his style of football?
Definitely has been a new adjustment. Obviously, a lot of learning to be done. But there's a lot of options, and you kind of appreciate that as an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
A lot of different ways the ball can go, and some of you appreciate.
Obviously, with that offense, back in the day, it scored a lot of points. Are you hoping to have that same type of production even year one?
Hope to keep it rolling.
Okay.
Just like he did back in really the golden age of Mountaineer football.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Pat White, very explosive players, stuff like that.
Steve Slayton, those guys.
I look at clips and I'm like unbelievable. You see the atmospheres like that, and you want that to be Mountaineer football. Our fans deserve that and everything for them showing up every single game and stuff like that. So. Definitely has been an adjustment, kind of learned everything, but excited to get going and season getting closer.
West Virginia's on the far side of one part of the conference, BYU's on the other side.
Exactly.
What do you know about the Cougars? What have you learned, I guess, in the short time you've been watching them, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so I know they came to Morgantown 2 years ago. We played them, and I was able to play in that game a little bit. But I know that they're a very tough opponent. They had a great season last year, and we know that they're going to be tough this year, and we've got to be ready for them.
What do you like most about playing in the Big 12?
I think that the Big 12 has the best atmospheres you can play in college football. You look at really, and talking about the atmospheres, like the stadiums, the environments, is absolutely insane. You look at West Virginia on the far East Coast, and then you look at BYU on basically the opposite side, and really going and traveling and seeing all these different atmospheres and stuff like that, and playing in elite environments. Some that growing up I wish for as a kid, and it's just great to see that, and hopefully that we can continue to play in some of those big time environments.
Does the travel actually affect your performance, do you think? Because obviously 3 different time zones and the like.
Definitely a little bit of an adjustment, but I wouldn't say it's that big of a deal. Mentally, you gotta kind of get adjusted to it with the sheep schedule and everything like that. But when it's game time, and when we're in the locker room about to run out, it's really when it turns on, and excited to make that happen.
The reason why I asked, the last thing I want to ask you about is because that game against BYU is going to be a late night Friday night game. It's like a 10 o'clock, your body clock time.
Yeah.
Does that affect anything in your mind, or is it just, hey, we're playing ball, let's go?
Playing ball,
okay.
And it's it's going to be a big time environment, and definitely energy going to be in the air. So it's definitely exciting. Can't wait for it.
A big thank you to Landon Livingston from West Virginia and the West Virginia Mountaineers for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. And he's not wrong. You come from the mountains out there in the Appalachians. That's one thing as you go to Morgantown, but I don't think you can really prepare yourself ultimately for what the Wasatch Front looks like to anybody who hasn't grown up here. I'm lucky enough to have lived here most of my entire life, and well, nonetheless, I think the bigger point is people who live along the Wasatch Front, I think we take it for granted how close the mountains are in proximity to literally our homes and Lavelle Edwards Stadium in particular. But Landon Livingston's looking forward to that and looking forward to the experience of playing at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. It'll be a late night, obviously 8:30, I believe is the kickoff time on that Friday night. It'll be 10:30 body clock time for West Virginia, but you can tell that this is a kid who's excited to experience everything that BYU and Provo have to offer. And a big thank you to Landon once again for joining us here on Locked On Cougars. All right, that is going to do it for this Monday edition of the show. I am headed out on vacation, so new shows will be coming your way all week long, but there is breaking news that sometimes happens when I'm out on vacation. We'll recap it all for you guys early next week when I am back in the office, as they say, but hey, I'm not leaving you high and dry. I got a lot of good conversations, a lot of interviews I conducted at Big 12 Media Days. You'll be hearing over the next 4 or 5 days right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. So as always, once again, thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing this with family and friends, and make sure you come back every single day and get your daily dose of all things BYU, and do it with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.